For more on Russia's pivot to eastern Ukraine, Toomas Hendrik Ilves served as president of Estonia from 2006 to 2016. Hi, Mr. Ilves. Thank you very much for making the time. Good to have you on our program tonight.
Great. Good to be here.
I wanted to start off with Russia's assault on eastern Ukraine, and in particular, Ukraine's expectation that the scale of that assault will grow exponentially in the coming days. What are your expectations?
Well, more or less the same as the Ukrainians for a number of reasons. One, they have a consolidated leadership now, and secondly, they're not on 5 different fronts, but they're concentrating on this area. Third of all, it's strategically far more important for them than say taking Kiev was more of a political, ideological thing. And finally, because eastern Ukraine borders on Russia, it's a lot easier for them to supply. And in fact, fifth, you could say that just the terrain of eastern Ukraine is much more advantageous to the Russians for open warfare.
Do you think Putin is backing away from Kyiv and moving here, or just focusing on this area in order to lay the groundwork to eventually go back because of the political significance, as you mentioned, of Kyiv?
Well, it's hard to know his mind, frankly, but clearly the shambolic approach they took beginning on February 24th with little planning and kind of this braggadocio approach of we're just going to go in and everyone will fail, it's finally dawned on them that the Ukrainians are actually fighting. To pull out completely is impossible for them politically and to save face. So now they are concentrating on an area where victory, or their victory, I should say, seems, well, more likely. And in fact, strategically, aside from all of the ideological kind of bizarre justifications that they have made in order to invade Ukraine, this is really actually the prize, which is being able to connect Russia directly to Crimea or the Crimean Peninsula, which up till now has been isolated. So this, he could, if achieved, he could declare victory.
To that end, Putin said today that his war with Ukraine would succeed, quote unquote, and described peace talks as reaching a dead end. As far as those talks are concerned, and I certainly don't want to sound naive, but there have been points at which over the past 6 weeks, it looked like even for example, President Zelensky was saying there are a few positive outcomes of these talks. There could be some tiny modicum of hope. Do you think that is impossible at this point?
You know, to be honest, it's very hard to know Putin's mind because this changes from time to time. I mean, I think that he has to achieve something, and it seems also clear that the initial intent really failed. And now he's denying the initial intent, which was, as we know, as evidenced by captured tanks that had parade uniforms in them, as if they were going to do a victory parade in the last week of February in Kyiv. This would enable him to declare victory and to lay down terms for Ukraine. I mean, this is also why it is so fundamentally important for Ukraine to not lose this. This is really turning into a major battle on the order of some of the big battles of World War II, with massive amounts of troops, massive amounts of armor, and a huge face-off between two sides. Where the Ukrainians are, well, in terms of materiel, are actually in a weaker position. On the other hand, the Russians have very low morale. They have proven themselves to be very poor fighters. People don't want to fight. So it's not clear what the outcome will be. It's certainly not the kind of battle where you say, well, one side has a huge advantage over the other. The biggest problem for Ukrainians, other than where they're fighting and their location, of course, is that they do not have enough heavy armaments, whereas the Russians do. They don't have control over the airspace, whereas the Russians more or less do. So it's, but again, as we have seen with over and over in the past 6 weeks, the heroism, the willingness of the Ukrainians to fight for their own country can overcome a lot of numerical and material superiority that the Russians have had from the beginning.
I just have a few seconds left, so I just want to zone in on that last point that you've made, in particular, the needs of Ukraine when it comes to armament and some of the deficits that they face. Slovakia appears to be willing to send some fighter jets to Ukraine. Do you think that is actually a legitimate possibility, just because other propositions have so far been kind of nixed by the U.S., for example?
Well, they are Slovak planes, and they are planes which Ukrainians have been trained to fly. They are MiGs, so they have experience with them, and certainly that would be a huge boost to the Ukrainian side, as would be what seems to be tanks from Poland, as far as I can tell, though this information is sketchy. And these are precisely the kinds of weapons that Ukrainians need, in addition to the drones that they have been using with extreme effectiveness.
Okay, Mr. Ilves, I have to leave it there. I appreciate your time very much. Thank you.
Bye.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.